Hello everyone, today I bring you a video telling the story of James and Diep, where secrets surrounding Diep's background are gradually being revealed. Please stay with today's video to better understand the subtle developments quietly unfolding beneath the calm surface. While sitting at work, James suddenly slowed down. The pen in his hand paused mid-stroke, and his gaze no longer focused on the neat lines of text on the screen. The numbers and planning charts that were once so familiar suddenly felt distant, blurring as if covered by a thin layer of mist. His mind drifted back to an old memory, the last time he visited John. It had seemed like an ordinary meeting, nothing special at all, yet within that ordinariness lay a detail James had never been able to forget. That day, John told him that James's father had once said Diep looked very much like her mother. Not just in facial features or outward appearance, but in something deeper, her composed demeanor, her quiet eyes that held layers of unspoken thoughts, and her gentle, measured way of treating those around her. Hearing that, James had frozen. What he felt was not mere surprise, but a silent shock that spread from his chest throughout his body. He had heard many people comment on Diep, that she was gentle, that she was mature beyond her years, that there was always something uniquely special about her. But the fact that his father, a man who rarely made emotional judgments about anyone, had drawn such a comparison was something James could not take lightly. In that moment, he tried to ask John more questions, hoping to find a clearer clue. Yet John knew only that much. After that brief mention, John's father never said anything further, and stories about Diep's mother seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog, revealing no trace at all. From that day on, a lingering question took root in James's heart. It did not appear openly, nor did it make him panic or lose control, but it quietly followed him in his most peaceful moments. At times while working, in meetings, or even while talking with Diep, he would suddenly notice his gaze lingering longer than usual, as if searching for an answer he himself did not yet know how to name. James returned to the present when he heard his mother's gentle voice calling from behind. Her familiar, warm tone pulled him out of his wandering thoughts. She stepped into the room and lightly placed a cup of hot coffee on his desk, its aroma softly filling the already quiet space. She reminded him not to overwork, saying that he had only just returned and his body needed time to readjust. James smiled and thanked her politely, but deep down he knew very well that since his return, the workload awaiting him had been anything but small. The company was preparing to enter the year-end phase, and everything needed to be arranged carefully. New personnel had to be selected with great care, ensuring both competence and compatibility with the company culture. The year-end bonus plan was also no simple matter, as James always wanted fairness between long-time employees and those who had only recently joined. He did not want anyone to feel overlooked or disadvantaged, especially during such a sensitive time. That was why James meticulously reviewed every item and every number. He went through each report and proposal from the departments, weighing each decision for a long time. To him, the company was not merely a workplace or an asset to be run efficiently, but a responsibility to many people who placed their trust in his leadership. Every number on the planning charts was tied to real lives, families, and the quiet hopes of employees behind the scenes. His mother stood at the doorway, silently watching her son. She could clearly see his focus and effort in every small movement, from the way he turned each page of documents to the thoughtful look in his eyes whenever he paused to think. In her heart, she felt both proud and worried. Proud that her son was growing more mature, capable of shouldering great responsibility, yet worried because she knew the road ahead for James was still long and not always smooth. All she wished was for James to maintain his health, because more than anyone, she understood that some burdens did not come only from work, but also from unanswered questions that were quietly growing heavier within his heart. In that house, there was still an unfilled silence, the relationship between James and his father. It was a quiet gap, not loud, not erupting into open conflict, yet smoldering over the years, seeping into everyday life. Although his father had once taken the initiative to apologize and acknowledge his mistakes, the two of them had never truly sat down, faced each other, and spoken everything that remained trapped in their hearts. Everything stopped there, unfinished and suspended, like a door left ajar but never fully opened. James's mother understood this better than anyone. Standing in the middle, she saw both her husband's silence and her son's hesitation. She knew James was neither stubborn nor indifferent, he simply carried too many emotions that had never been released. Some old wounds seemed long asleep, yet all it took was a glance or an unintentional remark to awaken them. She always hoped that father and son would one day find common ground, not to decide who was right or wrong, but so that James could feel lighter, no longer burdened by heavy thoughts each time he came home. As for James's father, he saw things in an entirely different way. In his mind, as the father, the elder, the pillar of the family, it should be the son who took the initiative. He believed that having apologized once was already a significant step back on his part, and now it was James's turn to show tolerance and understanding. That rigidity did not stem purely from pride, but from the way he had lived and believed for many years. Yet it was precisely this mindset that unintentionally built an invisible wall, making the family atmosphere heavy at times, even though deep down, none of them truly wanted to hurt the other. That distance, though never spoken aloud, was clearly present at every meal. There were dinners when the whole family sat together, the food still hot, yet the conversation revolved only around the smallest, safest topics. Everyone carefully avoided subjects that might lead to silence. At times, a sentence would trail off halfway, not because there was nothing left to say, but because no one knew how to continue. Their eyes would meet briefly, then quickly turn away, as if each person were cautiously guarding a fragile boundary. After finishing his work for the day, James leaned back in his chair, relaxing shoulders that had been tense for hours. In that rare moment of quiet, images of Diep and little Nee suddenly became vividly clear in his mind. He thought of Nee's smile, Diep's gentle voice, and the sense of peace he could only find when he was with the two of them. It was then that his mother softly suggested inviting Diep and Nee over for a family meal sometime soon. The suggestion made James hesitate. He did not respond right away, instead falling into a long silence. A nameless worry rose within him. He feared his father's presence would make the meal awkward, feared Diep would sense the underlying tension, and feared that little Nee, with a child's sensitivity, might unintentionally notice what the adults were trying to hide. James did not want the people he loved to experience even a fleeting moment of discomfort. Still, he gently told his mother that Nee missed her very much. He shared how every time Nee mentioned her grandmother, she would ask when she could come visit, when she could sit and listen to her stories again. James's eyes softened as he spoke, as if merely thinking about Nee was enough to ease some of his exhaustion. He hoped his mother understood that even if everything could not yet be arranged perfectly, the bond between her and Nee was something he deeply cherished and carefully preserved. To James, Diep and Nee were not simply the people he loved. They were the place he returned to after overwhelming pressure, his emotional anchor whenever he felt tired or lost. With the two of them, he did not need to calculate, to play a role, or to brace himself under responsibility. It was a rare space where he could be himself, let his guard down, and listen to his true feelings. That was why James always tried to protect that sense of peace, even if it sometimes meant hesitating, choosing silence, and accepting that certain distances could not yet be bridged right away. James and Diep went shopping for little Nee together on a fairly quiet afternoon. The shopping mall was not too crowded, allowing them to walk at an unhurried pace, choosing items while chatting about very ordinary, everyday things. They did not head for flashy stores or eye-catching items, but lingered longer in the children's clothing section, where there were warm jackets, long pants, socks, and shoes suitable for the coming weather. For James and Diep at that moment, niece comfort and safety always came first. Each item was considered carefully. Not because they were trying to save money or worried about expenses, but because they both understood how quickly children grow, and that the most important things were proper fit, warmth, and freedom of movement. James paid close attention to the material, asking the staff whether the fabric was thick enough and if it might irritate a child's skin. Diep carefully examined the stitching, tested the zippers, and checked the buttons to make sure nothing would cause discomfort when Nee wore it. Their attentiveness came naturally, as if they had long been used to taking care of the child together. Diep gently held up each jacket, pressing it lightly against herself to estimate the size. She worried about whether the sleeves might be too short, whether the collar might feel too tight, and whether it would be warm enough for windy, colder days. Each time, she tilted her head in thought and softly asked James, "Do you think this one is okay?" Standing beside her with his hands in his coat pockets, James quietly observed her every movement. He did not rush her or push for a decision, only occasionally smiling, nodding, or offering a small suggestion when he felt it was needed. Those moments passed slowly and simply, yet carried an indescribable sense of closeness. There was no need for flowery words or grand gestures, just standing together among rows of children's clothes, thinking about a child, was enough to create the feeling of a real family. James realized that it had been a long time since he had felt this calm, free from the constant pull of work and tangled thoughts. In the end, they agreed on a hooded jacket for Nee. It was simple, softly colored, warm enough, and very practical. They both remembered that Nee did not like separate hats and often lost them or took them off halfway through the day. A jacket with an attached hood would keep her warm without too many reminders. It was a small decision, but one filled with care and understanding, built from countless little details of daily life. After finishing the payment, James glanced at his watch and reminded Diep that it was almost time to pick me up from school. That simple sentence alone made his heart feel unexpectedly lighter. He suddenly realized that although his life still carried many pressures and unresolved issues, he had things that were deeply worth cherishing, peaceful afternoons, ordinary moments, and people beside him who made him feel less alone. Yet even within that sense of calm, somewhere in James's mind, John's words from years ago had never truly disappeared. They did not surface sharply or insistently, but flowed quietly like an undercurrent. Diep looks very much like her mother. Every time he saw Diep carefully choosing clothes for Nee, every time he noticed how her eyes softened when she thought of her child, those words echoed again in his mind, making it impossible for him to completely dismiss them. An unclear connection, a past that had never been spoken of, and a truth that might still be lying dormant somewhere, waiting to be touched. James did not share these thoughts with Diep, nor did he let anything show on the surface. He maintained his calm, walked out of the store with her, and blended into the hurried crowd outside. But deep inside, those scattered pieces seemed to be quietly searching for a way to connect. The piece was still there, clear and genuine. Yet behind that piece, there might be a door to the past that had not yet been opened. And James understood that whether he wanted it or not, there would come a day when that door could no longer remain closed. Stay tuned for the next episode to discover what unfolds next in the story.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đang ăn chuối sấy. Ngon quá. Tạm biệt mọi người.